Now, welcome. So the Gianni Infantino vision has been realised. The inaugural Club World Cup is underway over in the US as we speak. Just in case you're not keeping track, we've completed the first round of matches. So match day 1 is done. I'm sure lots of people are enjoying it, but there's a general sense of shrug of indifference over here. To be fair, we weren't expecting otherwise. We weren't exactly counting down the days. But I guess there was a chance once it would start that we might all get into it. Not so, thus far at least. Even on the ground, some fairly embarrassing spectacles for FIFA and Gianni. Ulsan against Mamelodi Sundowns in Orlando was attended by 3,410 people. So that did not scream Club World Cup fever. Jonathan Wilson is on the way. We'll see what he makes of it. Before that, there is much to discuss with Dan McDonnell in studio. Hello.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Ulsan Mamelodi Sundowns, did you catch it?
I didn't. What I did catch was I was surprised that was the final attendance, because there was a journalist in the stadium who'd posted something up saying they'd counted 97 people in the place, but it turned out that was maybe 40 minutes or so before it.
They were in the pub around the corner.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was the late rush, maybe there was a bit of rush hour traffic and wherever that was.
Do you know where Ulsan play their football?
I do. They're in Korea. I looked it up at the time, yeah.
Did you know before?
No.
Me neither.
No.
Mamelodi Sundowns?
They're South African, yeah.
Well,
I would have known that. There's a ex-Shamrock Rovers player who's was one of their goalkeepers, so I would have known that. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing is like, it's just vulgar, but and the Gianni stuff is just, it's extraordinary, And the problem he has with this is that clearly the way to make this work, and if this is counter to how I think about a lot of things, even though I really don't understand the qualification criteria for this tournament, it seems to be like an invitational sort of pick and mix thing going on. But how FIFA obviously central, to how they strengthen their power is to, give more places to, say, countries from different confederations and so on, which in international football works absolutely fine. Like the expanded 48 team World Cup it'll be absolutely grand, I think. I have issues with it, but I'm just saying, like, there'll be full countries there and there'll be great joy and scenes of jubilation in wherever it might be. Like I see Uzbekistan have qualified now off the back. Well, they would have qualified, some countries who may not otherwise have qualified will be there, but there'll be euphoria in those countries. But with club teams, small enough club teams, with the way he works, he has to keep them in the Club World Cup, because if he suddenly makes it, that what could make it successful would be if it became an elitist Super League style cup competition. But that's completely at odds with how FIFA govern and how they sort of manage their power. So the whole thing is doomed to some kind of failure, and they're obviously throwing loads of money at it to some of these. So like Ulsan or Mamelodi Sundowns are collecting millions here. But he has to keep them in it for political reasons, but that's going to damage the football spectacle. So the whole thing, I mean, you really just want it to fail, personally. But I mean, they seem determined to keep bringing it back. And would we be different, I will say, to pure devil's advocate? Like, I don't necessarily know, I have to say, where to find these games. Like, it's on, like, is it the Zone, I think? Or, I mean, I don't possess... I am not an owner of a dodgy box, which is obviously a topical news thing, and I see on front of our paper today, but I don't have one. Maybe if you do, it's very easy to find some of these games, but they're just not visible. If it was an RTE, imagine RTE had a deal. I'm just saying devil's advocate here. If RTE had a deal and every game was an RTE, like it will be, say, for the Women's Euros in the summer, which without Ireland is something that's not going to necessarily grab people like it might, but you'd probably find yourself watching an hour or two of games in the evening. Would you?
Not so far.
No? Like, I did find myself last night half following the Madrid Al Hilal game. Like, Trent was playing, and it's like, okay, vaguely interested. I found myself checking the scores on the app, like that was the first game. I don't know why. It's maybe because they went behind, or I saw Trent, like, it came up on the feed, like they got done for a goal, which I think might be disallowed. But yeah, I mean, but the whole thing is basically obscene. Yeah, that's my stance on it.
Very good. Well, we're going to chat to you about matters closer to home. Our football coverage is in association with Sky Sports, where you can experience more exclusive live sport than anywhere else, including at least 215 Premier League games from next season. There is also, of course, every golf major. Alan Shipnuck was on yesterday, speaking of golf majors. He's so good. You should have a listen. Turns out he's writing a book about Rory McIlroy.
I was interested to hear that because his Mickelson book is good and
excellent.
Obviously, I don't know. I haven't listened to your chat with Alan yet, and I am planning to.
We'll say no more.
Yeah,
Rory's not cooperating.
Yes, I was just going to say, I remember Rory calling out Shipnuck in one of the post Ryder Cup press conferences. So this isn't coming from a place of warmth.
Yeah, although it seems they had a big chat at Oakmont in the car park, which Alan couldn't divulge, but he said it was revelatory.
I think Kimmage had 25 minutes in the car park.
I think he just summons different journalists.
Like it was just an
audience.
Who's on the car park today, you know? That's where it all happened.
So every golf major,
Especially
every F1 race, this week's Premier League darts finals, the 2025 Lions Tour course, and much more. You can watch Sky Sports on Sky, or you can stream it now. Alan Shipnuck in your feed. I appreciate Drogheda's the big story. Can I just get your opinion on where Damien Duff is?
Okay.
And this is, we're busy. This is just the last 3 days in his life. So Friday, Shelbourne lose 2-1 to Rovers. That's kind of death knell for their champions, for their defence of their title, I feel. And then it goes from handshake before, handshake after to zero class being screamed in front of the Virgin cameras, in front of you guys as well. And his comments about how there's a way to win with respect, humility, class. I've done that since I was a boy. He does not think that they do it. And he basically said it's not just tonight. He doesn't think they do it generally. So really not happy. And that feud continues. Monday, Linfield Champions League qualifier. Monday evening, 1-0 win at Richmond against Pats. Drops to his knees. Wakes up Tuesday.
Shell's social media recorded them at very close quarters, dropping to his knees and getting up and giving the celebration. That's sort of a perfect photo.
What's your sense of what's going on with Duffer?
Well, I don't know. Is that a leading question in the sense that do you think that he's I don't know, he's suffering something or he's going through? I sort of feel like this is the normal energy in some respects, I will say about last Friday in Talca, I was a little late getting across because I was doing actually the post-match video that we do for the site. So I got across, so I did miss the coming out shouting at Stephen Bradley. And I was like, oh God, this is, and then I've since heard it, and I've, I heard the audio and it's just and then was able to clarify then in the short space of time what it was about, and the part of it was the song Upstairs, and I then asked him about that.
Will you hum that? How does that song go again?
We were in here a couple of months ago and you didn't know who Mara Picato was.
No.
And this came up, and yet was it you and Connor, and you were like, I don't know. I was like, this is a very well-known song.
I've since listened to some of his stuff and you know the song.
You all know him. This guy is actually
No, I didn't recognise whatever you hummed.
But he was doing a sold out. I've told you this. He performed in Talca recently.
I watched the video with him.
And after doing a sold out show in the Academy the night before.
No, but I watched him playing for Shelbourne fans in Talca, inside.
Oh yeah.
So Rovers play. It's provocative.
Yeah, but I don't that happens.
Is it classy? Is it classy?
Is it classy? I just think it's football. It's just it happens. It's one-upmanship. I think the route I think is some of the Shells Rovers stuff is it got really feisty on the pitch when Rovers beat Shells in the fourth last game of last season, and I know that Shelbourne players are not just aware of it because I heard that they were motivated by comments made on the pitch to them by Rovers players at that time. I think along the lines of, you're rubbish, you've screwed it up, whatever, and I think
you're going to choke. Yeah,
and then they didn't, and I think that's where some of the disrespect feeling comes from. I don't think in isolation, unless Damien Duff did say amongst other things, from what we've seen and what we're aware of, the dressing rooms are very close in Talca. Put on the song is a little bit cheeky, but it's not, to me, something that's a massive affront. It's not it's I think you might have made this point the other day, it's not it's some deeply personal song. It's it's like a dance number, you know, and it's catchy, and the Rovers fans were singing it at full time. Like that goes around, comes around with that stuff. Like Shells will have their moment, I'm sure. You know, they had their moment last year. Like when Shells won the league last year, you know, Joey O'Brien was giving a speech about knocking Rovers off their perch. You know, like that happens. You know, so that to me is not a big thing. To go back to where, sorry, I went roundabout there. By the time Damien Duff came in to do the print stuff, I was thinking, geez, he's going to be wired today. Like this is going to be gold. But actually, it was almost like he'd had his moment and it was out of the system. And he just came in and he was very quite measured. He spoke about it, but he also said, like, it was in the midst of a 10, 11 minutes where he said, weren't good enough in the game. So weirdly, you know, like this audio came out a couple of weeks ago of him tearing strips off the players in Cork at half time. And we said it to him after and he was almost borderline embarrassed. How did that happen? I do think he operates off this energy. So I wouldn't be diagnosing that at the moment he's going through like a particularly extreme version of that, notwithstanding the fact that there is no doubt that I'm sure he can't understand, or it's like they have been consistently losing or not winning and dropping points, and it may be that he's struggling to get a tune out of players, pardon the pun, in the way that he was before.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say there's anything noticeably different about him.
Are you'd have your ear more to the ground of the League of Ireland fan base?
Yeah.
Are people getting fed up with him?
Well, I mean, they will while engaging and responding and reading and reacting to what you say.
I'll rephrase it. Were they engaging and responding in a more positive way last year too?
Nah, I think it's been the same most of the way through.
Okay, well then, so it hasn't changed.
It's like, oh, look, he's bringing the fan on the pitch. This is, look at the state of this, you know.
Okay.
I think he is the pantomime villain for a lot of people. I think he probably enjoys it. I think there are times that he definitely would play up to it. You know, it's us against the world. I think that's just typical Siege mentality stuff. I don't think that actually really exists. Yeah, he will he's annoying a lot of people on a consistent basis, but also he's annoying them to the point where he's compelling them to comment on him. And, you know, even this whole thing of on a Saturday morning, people are looking to see what he said. People aren't, as you know, and it's like we have this say with the national team or various things, the biggest fear, the biggest danger is apathy. You know, that's the real issue. When people aren't stirred at all, I think people are still stirred.
What's your sense of, you know, Virgin Camera picks up Duff screaming zero class, right at Stephen Bradley. They felt sort of aligned for a lot of the last couple of years, particularly when it came to the FAI and their public comments. And of course, they're rivals, so there's going to be a little bit of, you know, best friends or two brothers just chafing off each other a little bit. That'll be par for the course. But, you know, zero class in front of everyone. I'd say the chafing has turned a little bit nastier now.
Yeah, and I think that has surprised people. Like, it's what's consistently said to me, and maybe in this forum or sorry, to a general audience, a lot of people are sort of thinking, oh, is this just all a choreographed sort of thing? And that, because people probably grew up maybe with a bit of that around the league with Dolan and Roddy and that stuff, that the assumption is that this is a bit, like this is a thing. And part of you would almost think, Jesus, is this the case? But I would have had someone on to me at the weekend to be very strongly sort of mutually affiliated to both of them and got on quite well with them, who hadn't been at the game on Friday and wasn't aware of what had happened, and they were like, what happened? And their sense of, oh no, like didn't think this would, sort of thought this would heal, but this is going to take years to fix. I think it probably will fix in time, but no, it is personal now, you know, and like obviously, like Damien Duff is the big name in the dynamic, but obviously Stephen Bradley is becoming a bigger name, and you know, Duff sort of shouting, you know, the comments previously about, oh, Stephen's an expert in everything now, to shouting about zero class, to shouting about big ego, like that's there's undertones there that aren't just as simple. Like last year, I think, you know, Bradley would have been quite disparaging of the standard, you know, of the league, which was sort of saying Shells aren't good champions really. and that's a really football thing. But when it gets down to personal, how you conduct yourself and so on, yeah, it's when you consider around this time last year, because Hamer hadn't been appointed this time last year. I mean, Stephen Bradley was saying Damien Duff should get the job.
Yeah.
I can't imagine similar things being said tomorrow.
I've seen Shells in a few games now. I get the sense they're industrious as ever. They're playing for their manager, hard working, games where they've plenty of possession, give away silly goals. They look a bit toothless.
Yeah.
Just they're not a scary proposition really for people in the league.
No, I apparently I was in Drogheda on Monday because following the Drogheda story became would normally probably have been at Pats and Shells, but apparently they were good in the first half on Monday. And I will say I've seen Shells play some really good spells of football at times this year. In Tala against Rovers, actually, they played quite well. But their style has evolved. They've become a more passing, possession-based team. There is a theory that maybe they felt they needed to undergo that evolution to prepare themselves for Europe, which is now bigger than ever for them. The whole year is going to be defined by Europe. Over the winter, they recruited, they were using an analytics company, and they targeted a particular type of athletic player because they got absolutely popped by Zurich in Europe last year. I think that was a sobering thing for them. Obviously, they want to get to the next level in Europe, and they went through a round in Europe and then went and played Zurich in Switzerland. I watched it. They were torn asunder in that game, and I think they did okay. But maybe by trying to evolve, they've gone a little bit away. They've lost something from what they've had. They've also had injuries to big players. But definitely, I've watched a lot of their games where they've conceded early. I think that's the problem. There's a soft centre in terms of conceding early and falling behind in a lot of games. And then they're just not that intimidating to play against when they're behind. But I said there's been some good 30, 45 minutes from them, and spells where they look like there's a good team breaking out here. Certainly in Tala, they really went toe-to-toe with Rovers in what was quite a compelling game. Last Friday, they were so far second best. They were so far second. And in fairness to Duff, he didn't sugarcoat it afterwards. For all the stuff that was going on, he wasn't complaining about the result. Yeah. The result was, anyone there looking at it would say that the better team won the game.
So as you said, Champions League becomes ever more important, or Europe at least. So Linfield, out of the hat, just to kind of put a bit of coolant on Damien Duff's life. Just
let's have a nice, calm All Ireland derby.
Well, which is it?
Yeah, that's the thing. What is the correct term? The reason I say All Ireland, and I'm probably conditioned to saying it, is that when the moves were afoot to do a cross-border league or to join the two leagues 5-6 years back, the Kieran Lucid stuff, they've really lost its momentum, but had the potential to be quite exciting. Now, obviously, as it happens, the League of Ireland's had a bit of a renaissance since then, so it doesn't feel like, as well, what can we do with this ailing product? It's actually had a bit of a boost. But a big thing that came to me was that for some of the northern clubs, they hate the term All Ireland, so to be welcoming, the clubs here need to stop, and everyone has to stop calling it an All Ireland league. Just say All Ireland, and that makes it more inclusive. I mean, come on, it's language, but
I would presume the Linfield fan base might be one of those clubs that might not love it.
Yes, although they previously, when they won the Setanta Cup, beating Shelbourne, would have described themselves as All Ireland champions.
This would be, if you took, I don't want to use the wrong words here. If I offend anyone, I offend, none intended. But if you take the sectarian aspect out of the thing, this would still be really charged, an All-Ireland derby, But then you throw that in, it's an extra little ingredient. I don't know, is that going to manifest in the stands around Dublin, at Tolka? It'll sort of be in the ether, but I don't watch Linfield. I don't have a sense of, backgrounds of their players. Pat Fenlon's been up there, so I presume...
Billy Fenlon, as he was nicknamed when he was there.
Billy Fenlon. I presume this isn't Rangers in the 90s, you know what I mean, or 80s. But obviously it has a leaning. What's your kind of concrete sense of the Northern Ireland unionist theme in this game?
Yeah, it is a thing that I'm even conscious talking about it to get the language right. Linfield played Dundalk in 1979, famously. The first leg of that game was so crazy that they had to play the second leg in Holland, because there's a documentary made about that game, made a couple of years back, about Dundalk and Linfield in 1979, and the Linfield fans came down, and it was mayhem. and like this, like they had to move. The two teams went to play in Harlem, and it's just like a mad, incredible story. And they played Shamrock Rovers in the 80s. Bows played Rangers in 1984. There was a lot of trouble at that game, but there was a feeling that there was a lot of Linfield fans involved in it. Now, Cork City played Linfield 10, 11 years ago, and I can't, off the top of my head, nothing sticks out. Maybe there was chance and stuff. And I feel, look, where we are, like it is around July 12th. Like July 12th is in between these two games, so it is a time of the year where things can be quite fraught. And it's funny because Linfield as a club, and you speak to people like Chris Shields, who's a Dubliner, like excellent dog player, plays for Linfield at the moment. Unfortunately, he's suspended for the first leg. But like in some respects, I know people that they're quite a classy club and how they like to be perceived. And funnily enough, when it came to the All Ireland League stuff, they were way more receptive than some other clubs, because Linfield see themselves as a massive club, and they're probably looking at, commercially where we're going. They won the league by 22 points last year. I think they have but there is no doubt that they will have sections of their fan base that will, would be certainly more so from the provocative end of things. And what will happen, I feel like, around this game, I think there's going to be very small travelling support from Linfield in Tolka just because of the capacity. The question mark is how many fans will Linfield allow Shelbourne bring, because there's no capacity issues with Windsor Park. Shamrock Rovers played Larne last year. There was chance. I'm sorry, but I'm sure there'll be chance this time. I just know there will. Like this, it's human nature. Like it's football chance, and I don't know, will there be a bit of, but like Larne were kind of a small village team almost in a lot of respects. If Linfield are playing and there's chance coming about the Queen or whatever, yes, there will be chance coming from the other side. If that's as bad as it gets, look, yes, of course we have to condemn it, and we don't, we have to be better with our language, but this will happen. But it is going to be charged. Like there is no doubt. And like I made the point in the piece, this is the most tense. This round of football is, I love it, but it's so high stakes, and the difference between winning and losing for these clubs is transformative. But when you add in the cross-border aspect to it, it'll be extremely intense.
Who are the favourites?
Shells would be, yeah. Look, Shelbourne will be the favourites, but like Shelbourne aren't as good as Shamrock Rovers, and Linfield are better than Larne. I mean, Shamrock Rovers destroyed Larne. It was embarrassing. I think a lot of people, particularly sort of, in the north, sort of built up that game as this is going to be, and like TNT covered it, and it was a big, like, this is going to be fascinating. And then within 10 minutes, it was like, oh God, like this is a complete mismatch. Big advantage for Shelbourne is that they're in season. Linfield, this will be their first competitive game. And while Shells have been average, they are quite a fit side. I will say that. They often finish games quite well. So they will be favourites, but I think it'll be a lot closer than Shamrock Rovers and Larne. But within football, you chat to people, I think there will be a sense of this was a very good draw for Shelbourne. Now, but Linfield are a proper team, and they'll be more intimidating to go and play against. But I sort of feel like you have to take this opportunity if you're Shells. Rovers are going to win the league again this year. This is Shelbourne's chance to get that Champions route, to get that sweet, sweet money. Like Shelbourne, you had Mossy Quinn in. He's spoken about it in other interviews as well. Like that club, they've got good investors there, but it is running at quite a substantial loss.
Yeah.
The Champions route is your way to make some money here, and that will bring pressure. They will know that. Everyone will know that. But I think on a football level, Shells should be favourites. Yeah.
Word seems to be RTE are going to swoop in and get the game as well.
That's that is not confirmed at the moment. It's been reported. I've made some inquiries about that, and sort of right to the top of it, say, is this done? And I was told that it wasn't.
Okay.
It's not done, but they're obviously in for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully it is shown on RTE.
Okay. Just to mention Shamrock Rovers, who, courtesy of Drogheda, have a bye to the second round in Conference League qualification. They will play either Cliftonville. Can't get away from these guys.
Yeah, I think Cliftonville and Shamrock Rovers are they're like brothers, sisters. They have a real kinship. So it'll be more.
Or St. Joseph's from Gibraltar,
who Shelbourne played last year, and St. Joseph's were offended when Shelbourne fans sang Gibraltar as Spanish and got fined by UEFA, and there was a bit of a diplomatic incident over there. I'd imagine Shamrock Rovers fans might be similarly minded. So the draws were kind this week.
Okay, St. Pat's have Hegelman who are from Lithuania, and then next round they'll face an Estonian side or an Albanian side. We'll cross that bridge.
And we will say with Pats, like they have been struggling.
I was just going to ask, what the way they finished the season last year, a lot of people were tipping them to kick on in a big way. Stephen Kenny, horse whisperer. There's letters under the door to players. They're ready to go. His daughter's Miss Ireland. It's all happening.
It's all going on.
That was the most Ireland is a village moment. Did you see the Miss Ireland is Stephen Kenny's daughter? And congratulations to her, amazing. I'm sure he's thrilled. But like, it was such a funny thing.
He was pictured at the event with her.
It's like, there's no degrees of separation to anyone.
I know.
But people had really high hopes for Pats.
Yeah, like Pats and Shells are 12 points off Rovers, and I would nearly feel like it's more of an underperformance from Pats than Shells in a weird way, because I think with Shells there was a part of you that thought, yeah, the psychology of being champions and trying to retain, that can sometimes screw with a team's heads. You know, you could see what's happened with them to a point. But Pat's one is just like, no, you have the conditions for a challenge. They have a really good squad, pretty much 2 players in most positions. It's just some of those players are playing really badly. And it's a challenge for Stephen Kenny, because when he's been successful in his football career, in his club career, it's generally in places where the blips have been very short, you know, and like last year he hit the ground running at Patrick. Here we go. This is going to be one of those Kenny era at a clubs where he just has wall-to-wall success, as it pretty much was with Derry, with Dundalk. With Bowes when he was younger had a bit of, he ended up losing his job. It was the first time he was sacked, but he did win a league first. He started well, and then this is unusual. He started well, and then they've gone into a cycle of, geez, they're struggling here. But they have players, you know, a lot of players on decent contracts, and it's like, okay, this is a bit more of a challenge. What I'd say about the European draw is that has to give them a lift, because they were unseeded. That first round tie, it's tricky, but I mean, again, they'll have standards to get by it. Their second round draw, they had 4 out of 5 bad options. Weirdly, Silkeborg, Drogheta's brothers were one of the, but that level of team, I looked at going, there's only one draw there that they've a really like strong chance in, and they've got it.
Okay.
So hopefully, you know, the players in some way they can go, okay, last year they were struggling under Kenny in the league. They went into Europe, played well in Europe, and all of a sudden they took off.
Yeah. At
home, but they need this. It feels like there's this intangible thing you're looking to happen. But they've been quite pedestrian at times as well too. Again, just not particularly hard to play against. People seem to have figured them out, and they haven't beaten any of the top teams.
Yeah.
Since March.
Well, we'll come back to Shamrock Rovers. They are steamrolling this league, so invariably we will. But time is against us. When you speak of Stephen Kenny, you think of Keith Andrews. This Brentford stuff shows no real signs of abating. It looks like it's happening. I mean, the reporting is fairly concrete. This is a spectacular jump for Keith Andrews, Premier League manager. I just didn't even think this was on the horizon.
No, it's amazing. Like this was. Look, we're obviously waiting for it to be confirmed. I don't know, like the indications were last.
What are the sticky negotiations happening?
Yeah,
that's the only concern.
Well, it could be staff. It could be like I see one of the other staff members went to.
He wants Roy Keane in, does he?
Yeah, Martin O'Neill.
Imagine how fed up Roy. Imagine how thoroughly disgusted Roy Keane is with this news.
He's going to be like, well, I mean, like Martin O'Neill already at the weekend was talking about it in TalkSport, and it was straight away like, well, Keith, I hope he gets the job because he was my biggest critic when I was Ireland manager. Oh, he said this already on Sunday on TalkSport, and it was like, you know, yeah, apparently he's very good at kickoffs, and that's brilliant, but management's a lot harder than that. Oof. So, yeah,
they really remember. That whatever Andrew said, it seemed to land with them in a particular way.
Keane went out of his way in 2020 to say, I mean, I just say one thing about the staff. It was completely out of nowhere. I think the conversation was somewhere completely different. I just want to say Keith Andrews is the biggest bullshitter in football.
Bluffer. That was in an interview in this paper, wasn't it? The Sunday Independent?
I think so, yeah.
Barry Egan?
Yeah, I think it was.
That's right. It was the most Barry Egan, Roy Keane.
It was almost just on one other thing.
Yeah.
He's a bullshitter. It was almost like, what? You know?
The biggest bullshitters are bluffers in football.
I know. I mentioned it in a piece the weekend. It was bullshitter was the quote.
Oh, sorry,
anyway.
bullshitter.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But like it's going to be unforgiving. Now, like we have to assume he's going to get the job. All the indications last Sunday was he was getting the job. and that he was looking for staff. Now, the only thing I would say is if there's a delay, like Brentford, it's obviously a massive gamble to give him the job. Maybe you have to be confident he's got the right staff around him to do it. So I hope, like, from his perspective, that isn't a sticking point. To say that if it does happen, and like that certainly seemed like there was a real confidence it would, it's an unbelievable story.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you would have worked with him. Like, he looked out to be going down the path of a media career. Then the Stephen Kenny thing comes up, who doesn't know, but he goes in, becomes synonymous with that sort of regime. Everyone's on about the number three, Anthony Barry. How are they coping with Anthony Barry? What did Damien Duff's gone? Hardly ever mentioned like that there was also a number two there, and Kenny would consistently go, but by the way, Keith Andrews, by the way, is my number two, and he's the main coach. To go from that, also in a lot of people's eyes in England, he's that EFL pundit who's on, all the Leeds fans dislike him for some reason, something he said. He is like and he's not an old man either, like he's 44. And we sometimes have it in our heads. We talk about, I know there's been Brendan Rodgers and Kieran McKenna and Island of Ireland managers, but we often like talk about how do you get your coaches to that level, you know? And just all of a sudden, almost overnight, you have a Premier League manager, which just goes to show that, like, and it probably will start, Roy Keane will probably say this, Roy Keane couldn't get jobs. Football is a lot about luck and being in the right place. And yes, there's ability, but Keith Andrews was a very good coach at Brentford. Like, you can be a very good coach at other clubs, but the ecosystem of that club will never promote their coach to be manager. They lose their manager, think we have to go out and get the experienced coach. Brentford seem to have a different philosophy. They promoted Thomas Frank. So there is an element of luck about it. And if he goes on to make it work, it just goes to show football just works in mad and mysterious ways.
Yeah. Before you go, Drogheda situation. It's been talked about a lot all week. I think people are generally au fait with what's happened here. The Trivela Group own two clubs, the Danish club Silkeborg and Drogheda. They missed the deadline to set up some kind of mechanism. People are pointing to blind trust being one of the more popular ones, which would reassure UEFA that things are separated sufficiently between the two clubs because they would be in the same competition. And they missed the deadline. The deadline was moved from June to March. Very emotional scenes on Monday. Kevin Doherty, their manager, very emotional. Everyone upset. Certain players signed, I'm sure, on the basis of European football. They went to CAS on Monday. They were very confident they would succeed in that case. But CAS made short shrift of it and said, no, this was all perfectly well communicated by UEFA. Now, it seems the FAI had a circular in October, which was not necessarily emailed on to Drogheda, but I talked to you on Monday, and your understanding, you're on top of this, a story like this as ever. Your understanding is it was communicated in some shape or form, but more to the point, Drogheda aren't leading this kind of mob to the headquarters of FAI to say we've been screwed by FAI here. So that they're kind of
the owners certainly aren't, but the owners are obviously based in America, and they were the ones who were contacted from the FAI. I think there's some Drogheda people on the ground at the club. Like Joanna Byrne, the chairperson, did go on local radio, Adam FM, and speak about that FAI circular. And you see this being ramped up in certain places, and it would strike me as Drogheda people on the ground in Drogheda seem to have seized on this point. Oh, this is the big thing. But certainly all the indications I've got from probably the ownership side of things is that they don't, for whatever reason, they don't want to make a big thing of the FAI aspect. And Ben Boycott, the owner, released a lengthy open letter yesterday where again vented at UEFA. The FAI thing, I don't think that barely registered in it.
Yeah.
So it's not ideal, but no, the issue for me from the FAI's perspective, if what they are indicating is true and that they were in touch with Drogheda when they took over Silkeborg to say they're concerned about this, well then the FAI should have been on to Derry City saying you should apply for a licence just in case. So that's where the FAI have erred.
Okay.
But in terms of the Drogheda correspondence, I sort of feel like it's more so on Drogheda. Where they have a point is UEFA, it does seem over the winter we're getting on to other multi-club operations and saying just so you know about this deadline, and that's where I think they have a grievance. But there is a tendency sometimes in Irish football that it's something that everyone identifies with and gets on board with is, oh, the FAI are to blame. Brilliant. This is such an easy thing to get behind. Often it's true. I don't believe it applies to Drogheda's case, in my view.
Okay. Well, it's a sickener for all concerned. And when you look at maybe some accommodations being made for Crystal Palace, if they were a bigger fish, they may well find a way out of this particular squeeze, but they're not going to. So, is this ultimately, other people could have helped, FAI included, maybe a touch more? This is at Travella, Drogheda's door. And it's you know, is there a degree of them now? They got to manage the Drogheda fans here so that
Yeah.
fans don't turn on them.
Look, I think what I would say as well is I guess they've looked in previous years and seen that the deadlines weren't hard and fast either. And you probably think that there's a workaround. Like, for example, Nottingham Forest didn't get their situation sorted with their blind trust accepted until April the 30th after this March 1st thing. And I guess it may well be that the UEFA have sort of decided to make an example of them. Weirdly, I think for Drogheda's perspective, if they read the Crystal, and there's differences in the case, we're not going to, I know time-wise, slight differences, but if Drogheda open their papers or open their phones and say the Crystal Palace have been allowed in, then I could see that then they would be entitled to go. As far as I know, Drogheda and Crystal Palace at one point were back to back at meetings in UEFA. Like, they were going in and out together. They were in the same boat. I think they were talking to each other. So if one's in and one's out, I think there's another case involving clubs in Slovakia and Hungary as well, ongoing. Weirdly, if Drogheda see other clubs getting kicked out, it probably makes it easier to accept. And it's like, all right, okay, UEFA are really coming down on this now. What do we do? If they're the only ones to get done, then that's an issue. But to speak to your initial point, they have some ground to make up. I will say, I think I'm going to have a piece probably in the Sunday Independent this week where I'm due to speak to some people involved in it, and I might be able to shed more light on the Drogheda perspective.
Dan McDonnell, thanks very much.
Thank you.